Welcome to the InfoMullet YouTube channel. If you enjoy this content, please like or share. And if you'd like to support the InfoMullet by becoming a mulleteer, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. So this is a neat tool that just came out. The link of this is in the discussion. And this is a global dashboard put together by the Vienna Complexity Institute. So these are the community I work with. So I was asked last night, I don't correspond with pandemic epidemiologist folks. I don't work with like the CDC or the World Health Organization. My corresponding networks are complexity scientists, system scientists. So folks at like Santa Fe Institute, Sandia National Labs, the Vienna Complexity Institute. And so there's different perspectives on how you track pandemics, whether you're looking at it as a system or as a disease or infection. And I think we may get into this more, but this is put out by the Vienna Complexity Institute. It's a neat little app, neat in that it's informative, not neat in what it's showing, and that it has every country and it tracks the per capita positive testing rate for the last 14 days. So you can see here, it's per 10,000. So all of these countries are color-coded by a population adjusted number. That's a big thing. People go, well, what about populations are different? And there's been a debate about, is Canada, is the US really more scary than Canada when you adjust for population? Yes, we are scarier than Canada when you adjust for population. Red, like literally the professor from Vienna who put this out, there's a quote from him saying, I'd feel fine traveling to green countries. I'd be a little nervous going to yellow countries, and no way in hell would I go to a red country. So you can see here, these two worlds that I described as emerging is you have the countries in green that have controlled or are controlling their outbreaks. The countries in red have lost control or don't appear to be controlling at all. And then the ones in yellows are mixed. And you can hover over each country and see where they're at. So for example, let's go up to Sweden here. This is what Sweden looks like over the last 14 days. And you can look at that behavior mode of tested positive and see kind of how they're doing. And this is why I'm able to say things like India is going to probably surpass Russia in cases pretty soon, because when we go over to India, it's almost a perfect exponential curve in growth up. So the testing rate, they're not going to be able to keep up with the testing, but you can even see where they're doing. It's an almost perfect increase. So it's even though, this is where you can see a yellow country that may end up becoming red very soon. And Brazil, we talked about Brazil. Again, it has that high increase. So if you look at this country, look at the yellows and the reds, and so compare it to United Kingdom, right? United Kingdom was not doing well by any measure, but you look at their testing rate and it has that nice decline that marks a wave one conclusion. It's got that up and down behavior. So yeah, people comparing Canada to the US, I got in this debate this morning on a Facebook page, the US behavior mode, this is that double hump, right? It had the hump that began a decline into April, May, and then has just shot up as we reopened in late May and we're fully open by late May, early June. Canada has a increase in decline. So if you start thinking about where are we at, not just now, but where will we be in 2 weeks, Canada, barring some change, will likely shift to green. You can see it's heading down to green there. And because they're controlling it. The US is continuing to accelerate. There's no indication that the US has even stabilized its upwards growth versus decreasing it. So, I mean, you can use these charts and these tools to look at where things are going. It's unlikely that the US would go from rising up to nicely down in a week. And it gives you an indication, again, you can begin to see the world breaking out into these two worlds. The Europe, which is largely contained, and most of these are going to probably go pretty green pretty quickly. You can see here Ukraine, one of my Nubier 7. It does have a challenge, but it's also sitting next to Russia. But Europe is going to be one of these worlds. Most of Africa is doing much better because of perhaps that past pandemic experience. Asia, East Asia, for the most part, has it under control, along with New Zealand, Australia. And the other world is the world that's still struggling. This is the United States, much of South America, parts of like Russia, for example. The Middle East is very much in the second world where it's still struggling. Iran has had a double hump formation, just like the US. Saudi Arabia, Oman, all these areas are sort of tricky. And we were joking this morning when we were looking at, this is a map of where you don't want to travel and where you can't travel if you're from the US, because most of these places are not going to want folks from those red countries coming in coming in to theirs without some sort of quarantine or something like that. So expect travel restrictions and things like that. Lucas, in terms of the pandemic, I talked about this. Lucas is making fun of when I talked about the United States being a third world country now. Everything that is, when we talk about a globalized world, previously that was based off the free trade concept, right? I arrange my supply chain, I travel for tourism, I do all these economic conditions based on the concept of free trade. That was the predominant paradigm probably since China began liberalizing its markets in the 1990s. You could say the last 30 years globally, even before that in Europe. We had a sharp shift in the last 3 months where it's now COVID free trade. And you're going to see these regional trading blocks begin reorganizing themselves with supply partners and supply chains and tourist destinations and all these things based on who's handled the pandemic and who's not. Now, how long that lasts depends on how long a country is unreliable as a partner for controlling its outbreak. The United States has a completely uncontained wildfire of an outbreak right now. Brazil's the same. I don't think that's going to change over the summer. The longer it goes on, the more solid these new global patterns. Now, maybe 5 years from now, things kind of revert, but we are forming the next couple years of global trade in these months of inaction. And it doesn't look good for where the US is relative to other countries. But thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to follow the InfoMullet, visit us on Facebook or Twitter. And if you'd like notifications when we post new video content, click on the red subscribe button below the video. If you've ever wanted to become a mulleteer and support the InfoMullet, visit us on Patreon. We appreciate the support.